Hey sports fans, I hope when you hear that sound you start thinking about the show that you just tuned into. This is the Unbiased podcast. I'm your host Connor Benyon, episode 1 coming at you on August 29th, 2022. And in the crazy world that we live in today, I know everyone is super busy, so we're going to jump right in. I don't want these episodes to be too long, maybe 10 to 15 minutes is what I'm going for. So we're going to jump right in, start with some expectations and ground rules. Number 1, I know what you're thinking right off the bat. I've got a BYU flag behind me. I'm wearing my Yankee pride. And you're automatically thinking, how does this guy have an unbiased opinion when he puts his heart out on his sleeve, if you will? And to that notion, I will say you will not see me getting up here saying how BYU is going to go win the national title this year. You won't see me talking about how the Yankees are the undoubted favorite to win the World Series this year. I keep it realistic, and I hope you enjoy that. I also hope that if you are seeking a political view, that you'll go and check out some other videos from other podcasts. I personally am going to stay away from the political side of the sports realm that I know exists, but that I will leave to others to focus on. I want to focus on what happens in between the lines and what happens on the field. And no better place to start than the Major League Baseball, which is just coming down to the wire. About 30, just over 30 games for almost all of the teams in the MLB remaining. And I just want to break down the standings, talk about what I expect to see for the remainder of this regular season and the postseason format that we're lucky to see. We're seeing an expansion of the playoff for, once again, something that I know myself I've been seeking for baseball for quite a while. So very exciting to see the 3 division winners and then 3 wildcard teams in the playoff. Talking about our division winners or our division leaders as it stands right now, I'm going to start with my Yankee pride, and it comes down to the Yankees have a 78-50 record. They are 7.5 games over the charging Tampa Bay Rays, who hold, if I remember correctly, the number 1 playoff spot. So the Yankees definitely have their hands full. They've been on a major slide. They just split a series with Oakland, who has the worst record in the AL. They take on, starting tonight, they take on the very talented Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. So I see the definite challenge of the road ahead. I think with their pitching staff and the hitting that they've had, they lead the major leagues in home runs. I still like the Yankees to hold on and win their division, and again, be one of those top 3 seeds. Our second division gets a lot more interesting. The Central Division in the AL, it's led by Cleveland right now, and they have a slim 2-game margin on the Minnesota Twins, who come in, and I look at Minnesota and I think they're the team that they always are. They come in, they have a very talented staff. They made some moves in the offseason, of course, with the Yankees. And I think that they're a charging team. I still like Cleveland holding on to that top spot and winning the division. They're on, they lost yesterday. They have a 5-5 record in their last 10 games, but I do like Cleveland holding on to win that AL Central. That is definitely your by far closest between the 3, because then you go to the West and you look at the juggernaut, the Houston Astros, a team that really has lost some key players from their World Series team, including, again, players like Garrett Cole, who went to the Yankees, Correa, their shortstop, who went to the Minnesota Twins. George Springer plays in Toronto now. They have lost a lot of really good players, but yet here they stand at 82-47, the best record in the AL. They are leading their division over Seattle by 11.5 games. Seattle's not going to catch them. I mean, hands down, the AL West belongs to the Houston Astros. And I don't see them being caught by Seattle. But it's the playoff race that heats up that gets very interesting on the wild card spot. Staying with the AL, again, your number 1 seeded team from the AL right now is the Tampa Bay Rays at 70-57. They have a 1.5 game lead over second seeded Seattle. The Seattle Mariners, a team that is really finding their rhythm. They are finally finding out how to stay strong going into the end of the season. They are right in the thick of a playoff berth. They come in at 70-58. They have a 1-game lead over the 3rd-seeded Toronto Blue Jays, 68-58, trying to charge up that rear. They hold a 1.5-game lead over Baltimore, who is trying to sneak in for that wild card spot in a very, very contested AL East. Again, just, and I apologize if this is where you want to like hit a unbiased buzzer, if you have it, at home and you wanted to ring a buzzer. Looking at the AL East, I know that's the Yankees division. I know that is the division that they play in, and that's going to make it sound unbiased, a very biased opinion. But you look at the AL East, and 4 of their 5 teams have a winning record. The Boston Red Sox, the 5th team that round out the division, have 4 games under 500, and that is by far the best in the AL. By the way, the worst team, like we said, is the Oakland Athletics. They're 48-81. And in the Central, the Detroit Tigers are 50-78. 28 games under 500 for Detroit, and even more for Oakland. But then you've got the Boston Red Sox, who are 4 games under 500. Like, that is a brutal division, which is why I just don't see Baltimore making up that space on Toronto. I think the 3 spots that we're looking at, Tampa Bay, Seattle, Toronto, I kind of like them staying where they are. Maybe the Seattle-Toronto switch, maybe Tampa Bay's 1, Toronto's 2, and Seattle drops to 3. But I think your division winners, like we said, are pretty set. I think it goes Yankees, not in that order, but Yankees win the AL East, Cleveland Guardians take the AL Central, and the Houston Astros take the AL West. In regards to who's going where, definitely Astros at 1, Yankees 2, Cleveland Guardians at 3, and then again, Tampa Bay 1. I'm going to stay at Seattle, staying at 2, but I could definitely be wrong about that. I'm going to stick with Seattle at 2, Toronto at 3, and with the new playoff format, the 2nd and 3rd seed wildcard teams will play, and the winner of that series plays the 3rd seed, and sorry, that's not true. Sorry, I'm like piecing it together in my mind. The winner of that series plays the number 1 overall seed, which would be the Houston Astros, and then the 2 and 3 would match up, which I just think is so interesting. Like, I'm already seeing some problems with this playoff format, though, because more than likely, the Houston Astros are going to have to play Tampa Bay. Well, should these be the 3 wildcard teams, they would have to play Tampa Bay, Seattle, or Toronto, and I think all 3 of those teams are better than Cleveland. So I'm very interested that the Yankees, should they be the 2 seed, would get, in my opinion, a more favorable matchup. But that's neither here nor there. This isn't going to the MLB. They don't care about me. So I will leave them alone. But that is what I think we're looking at in regards to the playoff race. The national side, it gets a little tighter unless you want to start, and that's where I'm going to start just because it's the most boring, but it's the most impressive as well, as the Los Angeles Dodgers out in the NL West. They are 19.5 games ahead of the San Diego Padres. And San Diego's no team to just sniff your nose at. They just acquired Juan Soto. I know that Fernando Tatis Jr. is suspended for the remainder of the season. But, I mean, this Padres team is a good baseball team. And they trail the Dodgers by 19.5 games. The Dodgers come in with a 88-38 record. So don't mess with the Dodgers. They add Freddie Freeman in the offseason. I mean, we'll talk about the Dodgers later on when they are juggernaut powering their way through the playoff race. But Dodgers, no question, number 1 seed in the NL race for sure. Definitely win the West. I mean, they have the best record in baseball. That is a scary team, as they have been recently. The NL Central, obviously a lot closer. St. Louis Cardinals lead that division. They have a 6-game lead over a charging Milwaukee team led by Christian Yelich. I like the Brewers, but I like the play of the Cardinals. I think they're a very classic baseball team, and I like them holding on to their division lead, and I like them winning the NL Central, sorry. So I've got the Dodgers winning the NL West, the Cardinals winning the NL Central, and the NL East. It's such an interesting story because you have the Atlanta Braves who really went in and won the World Series last year without being that absolute powerhouse until they turned it on. They are trying to catch the New York Mets, who currently have a 3-game lead over the Atlanta Braves. I like the way that the Mets have been playing. I love their pitching staff with Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom. A 3-game lead with just over 30 games to play. I think I've got to stick with the Mets winning that division, but the Braves, again, a talented team. They'll definitely give them a run for their money, but I do like the Mets holding on and winning that AL East. And so, again, 1 seed Dodgers, 2 seed Mets, 3 seed St. Louis Cardinals, and then the wild card, wildly entertaining from the National League, Atlanta is your first seed. No surprise, they're right in the thick of their division race. But what does get interesting is the Philadelphia Phillies have so quietly flown under the radar and slipped into that second wild card spot. And not only slipped they're half a game ahead of San Diego, who's the 3rd spot. Philadelphia has a 2.5 game lead on the San Diego Padres. So kind of the same thing. I like Atlanta being the number 1 wild card spot. I like Philadelphia staying at 2. I think that they've got a great baseball club. And then San Diego, I think, does stay at where they are, finishing off that 3rd wild card spot. So again, first show, that is my prediction of what we're going to see for the remainder of this MLB season. And again, it's gonna end quickly. I mean, baseball, night after night, night after night, night after night. All of a sudden, you're going into the hunt for October. So a very interesting MLB season to come to a conclusion, regular season to come to a conclusion in the not too distant future. Again, those are just my predictions. If I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And one thing I will say is, as I come on this show, I hope whether you leave comments or whether you just keep it to yourself, I do hope that you know that I will stand accountable to my predictions. I know in the sports world today, people can say what they want and they are never held accountable. They can be the most wrong person on the planet and it doesn't really matter. They can just keep running their mouth. So I do hope that if I am wrong, that I will come on and stay accountable and make sure that you understand that I'm not just here flapping my gums because I have the ability to sit in front of a camera. It has been an amazing MLB season so far, and it just gets me pumped for why I've got the flag behind me. The college football season is partially underway in the way of week 0, if you will, occurred. Some teams played this past Saturday, most didn't. Most teams are officially starting their season this week. And while you'd think I'd start with the BYU Cougars, we're going to start in the state of Utah with the unbelievably respected Utah Utes, coming in at number 7 in the AP preseason ranking. They returned Cam Rising. They had a heck of a run last season with just coming down to the wire and being defeated by a mighty Ohio State Buckeyes team in the Rose Bowl. They come in, they are number 7 in the nation, and they say, we want your respect. They are going to the Swamp. They fly to Florida to take on the Florida Gators. To give you a little bit of history, that means absolutely nothing. The Utah Utes and Florida Gators have met one time on the football field. It was back in 1977. The final score was Florida 38, Utah 29. Again, 1977, I'm not really all that focused on that affecting a 2022 matchup personally. If I was to give you a prediction, I can't pick against Utah in this case, and I can't for the reason that Kyle Whittingham, for the most part through his career, has really fired up his teams in early games. And again, this is not your typical Pac-12 team that goes and schedules Montana State. Or Montana, and no disrespect to those football programs, but this is a Florida team that plays in the SEC. I know Florida isn't the Florida that they were when they were winning national championships under Urban Meyer, but give me a list of teams that's going to volunteer and go play in the Swamp for week 1, especially coming from a Power 5 conference like Utah is. So I do think that I will rally around the Utah Utes. I do like them beating Florida, but I'll stand right here and tell you that should Florida come up with this victory at a 2.5-point underdog, I can fully understand and see where Florida could definitely, with the home field advantage, make up the difference. But I do like Utah starting out their 2022 campaign 1-0 and, putting it out there. This is a Utah team at number 7 overall. With the schedule they have and some opponents that they play, they have a very real chance of playoff implications. So they'll be a great team to watch as the season progresses. We'll actually stay in the state of Florida and get another ranked team from Utah, the BYU Cougars, travel to Raymond James Stadium, home of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where they will play the South Florida Bulls. Now, this is a fascinating matchup for the reason that in 2019, BYU and USF started their contracted play, and at USF in 2019, BYU fell victim to these Bulls 27-23. 2020 hit, COVID didn't allow USF to return, but the following year, just last season, they did return. They face off against the BYU Cougars in Provo last year, and BYU gets the revenge 35-27. Going back for the winner-take-all, if you will, Game 3, I like BYU. I think with the return of Jaron Hall and the seasoned leadership that he brings, just really looking forward to what he can do with this team. He's got a great receiver in Puka Nacua returning. I like this BYU team. I think their linebacker Peely returning this year after, I believe, being injured in the Utah game, which was the second game of the season last year. I really like this BYU football team. I like them winning against USF on the road to start their 2022 campaign, and definitely getting a right start in preparation for their big test the following week in hosting the Baylor Bears. Our third game that I wanted to focus on, and again, it's going to come across as I'm a BYU homer, I'm being biased towards BYU and letting my Utah State hatred of a rivalry show. The Utah State Aggies are doing what many teams just refuse to do, and that is they are hitting the road. They are going to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to take on Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide, who come in as a 41-point favorite. And, I mean, all due respect, again, not that history will tell us that much. Utah State and Alabama have met once. Alabama defeated Utah State in 2004, 48-17. And again, with the returning Heisman Trophy winner and Bryce Young, with the recruiting that Alabama has, I would be absolutely nuts and crazy to pick Utah State. Do I think that they can make this game interesting at some points? I definitely think so, but I can't go against Alabama. There are going to be very few games, if any, this season that I do go against Alabama, and this isn't going to be one of them, unfortunately. So I think 2 of the 3 Utah teams do come out victorious on the FBS side. On the FCS side, the Weber State Wildcats host Western Oregon. So I'm going to take 10 seconds and say Weber State, great. I expect them to roll over a Western Oregon team. Ladies and gentlemen, grateful to have you for this first episode of Unbiased. Again, I hope that as we continue this great experience that you will enjoy all that I have to share, and that if you enjoyed the content that you'll like, subscribe, share the video, and I hope to have you back next week. Thank you again for joining the Unbiased podcast. I'm your host, Connor Benyon.